Do you have fear of AI and its impact on relationships? ChatGPT honestly may be increasing your anxiety rather than helping you. My name is Deja J, and I'm here to talk to you about narcissism and AI. As a fashion model, I've experienced a lot when it comes to advertising and just being in an industry where looks are so dominant. And I've learned a lot about the way things can infiltrate our minds. So when it comes to AI and especially relationships, I think it's really, really important that we understand how we may be experiencing more anxiety even when we're trying to use a tool to actually mitigate or experience less. So when it comes to tools that are like ChatGPT, I am a huge, huge advocate for communication and healthy relationships. So this to me is a bit dangerous just because we get into this aspect of being disconnected from everything else when we use this tool. And by that, it becomes a sound chamber. So when you have a certain line of thinking or a certain interaction with someone, ChatGPT will take you to a point of basically godhood very quickly and making you think that you haven't really done anything wrong in a situation, or making it seem that the other person should be demonized. I saw an example, I think it was yesterday, of someone intentionally placing the prompt in ChatGPT saying that they were upset because someone cut them off, and ChatGPT was very quick to hype them in this rather than providing a balanced response. So when it comes to using these tools for self-help, it's really important to take everything with a grain of salt and understand that this can put you in a place where you feel like everything that you say and do is right, and it disconnects you from everyone else. And that exclusion of other perspectives becomes dangerous. Because the same way there have been so many wars that have been fought for religious discrepancies and language barriers and differences in cultures, the same thing can be ignited when people are left to their own quote unquote devices and figuring things out for themselves with just this machine that doesn't really have any bearing on the full situation, the full spectrum of what's communicated between person A and person B. In addition to this, it has been very clear that so many people have begun jumping to these points of thinking that criticism is someone hating on them, and these aspects of the technological advances have made it seem that when people present real perspectives to you and they're giving you feedback, that it is more so a sense of being a hater rather than actually helping you to grow. And mind you, there are some people, yes, that are moving for your detriment. And even in that, I always remind people that hurt people hurt people. This is a fact of life. So anything that people are progressively pushing outward toward you or anyone else is a reflection of their inner world. So it's important that we don't allow that to influence us. But also remember that there are people that you do need to receive criticism from, and going to things like ChatGPT that will tell you immediately that someone else's opinion is wrong puts you in a sound chamber that is very dangerous to be experiencing. Criticism is not hating and is necessary for growth. So also there are the dangers of polarization of already radical views. So I think we see this a lot now in the present day when it comes to the internet and the manipulation of psychology, and just how we are shown specific ads just based off of what we've said and the cookies that are stored in our browser history. All of these things are targeted to keep us online more. So the longer we spend online, the more we are giving our time to something that is not necessarily conducive or creating the person, the future, the outcome that we want to see. So we have to be very intentional with our time, or it only leads to more anxiety, because now we become so caught in these loops of not executing and not really becoming who we want to become, because our psychology is so addictive. It gets easy to get caught doom scrolling and things like that. And when you do this, you get caught in these wormholes of thinking that everything that you have thought previously was correct. And there becomes this intolerance for other opinions. And in that, it starts to isolate you and polarize you and make you think things that, if you had more exposure, when we have more exposure to communicating to multiple people and being open-minded and understanding of their beliefs and their views, even if we don't necessarily agree with them, then we expand as human beings and we grow. You see the same pattern when it comes to natural ecosystems, biodiversity. Everything coexists. There's not one culture across the world that exists. There's no monoculture. And when that does happen, when you see people who strip the land of all other life and they lay just one crop, it destroys the fertility in that soil. Everything begins to die, because there is supposed to be change, differences, biodiversity. Everything is always working together. So it's important that we remember we are part of that. And keeping an open mind allows us to have tolerance for our brothers and sisters that we're here with. So even that brings me to the point of how women and men have been so divided through the internet. And this becomes very narcissistic as well, because men and women both get into these holes, these pockets of thinking that one side is right and the other side is wrong. And I don't think anybody really gets out of it. I definitely have fallen into this. I definitely used to be the type of person who would generalize, oh, men do this, men only think this way and that way. And I've seen men do the same about women. And it wasn't until I realized that that was weaponized against me and my own agenda and wanting people to be one and see love and unity, and thinking that I have enemies just because they're male or masculine. I actually had to stop and remove that program from myself. So this, again, is something that is sharpened and increased if you go to a place where you're only having certain negative beliefs confirmed, and it only increases your negative beliefs, and you spin off into these dark holes of thinking that we are enemies, and we truly never have been. But so long as we believe something, we will behave a certain way. So we have to change our core beliefs. And if we are in a state of only confirming what we already believe, we have no open-mindedness to do so. It's also interesting to see that some of us have become so identified with our opinions that when someone disagrees with us, we confuse our opinions with who we are. When someone disagrees with us, we confuse our opinions for who we are. So we are so capable of listening and being open to the experiences of others without conflating that with our identity. So you can hear someone say something that is directly opposed to whatever you think, feel, or believe to be your truth and survive. This open-mindedness, rather than battling what someone else thinks, actually leads us to greater expressions, expansions, and understanding of ourselves and truth. Because again, we are existing in living systems that are so multitextural and cultured, and the beautiful fabric of life, the way that everything is sewn together is done in such an intelligent way, and it's far beyond anything that we think we can conceptualize. We are part of this beautiful magic that's happening here, but again, we are just such small, finite pieces of it, and we really can't fathom how expansive everything is. So it's important for us to understand that though we have these opinions, and I think it's important to have your opinion, yes. I think it's important to fight for what you believe in, yes. I have a backbone, stand up, that is so important. However, it's also equally as important and wise to assess someone else's beliefs, to hear them out, and always compare them to your own, because we are here to grow and expand. And if you're not using other people's experiences in an open-minded way to be able to grow of your own accord, then it's just going to end up causing more and more pain and stress, because you get into this place of holding so tightly on what you believe to be right, and it could be totally wrong. Our perception shapes our reality. So just because you're seeing something from a certain angle doesn't mean that someone else seeing it from a certain angle is wrong and you need to fight them. There is a parable, I think it's by Rumi, about an elephant standing in a room. And there are 5 men who go into this room. And each of them is touching a different part of the elephant. They don't know which parts. And one man is touching the leg. He's like, oh, this is such a strong column, such a strong pillar. Another man is touching the husk. He's like, oh, this feels like a very smooth blade. They're all touching different parts of the same being, and each have a different perception because it's dark and they really don't know what they're touching. So each of us are in different places in our lives, our journeys. We're raised by different people, different cultures, in different areas. So we have to have enough understanding of ourselves and one another to understand that it's going to look different for each person. There's no one that should be condemned because their perception is different. And in this technological age, everything is moving so quickly that we start to think that the truth is one way. Yes, there is one truth. However, that truth can be seen from many different shades. And it takes a certain level of wisdom and seasoning to be able to get to the point that you understand, okay, we have all walked these different paths and somehow come to the same conclusions. It is never wise to make an enemy of a man simply because he has a different line of thinking than you. Try to understand him as best as you can, because there is something to learn there. Always. Always. That is the point of it all. And it's also interesting to observe the way that ChatGPT is speaking to people. It's very kind and overly friendly in a way that seems buddy-buddy, and this is with no history there. So if you've not used ChatGPT, there is also a feature of it where you can access history. So it will save different notes about you, different things that you tell it, and then it will use those for future conversations only if you allow it. So it's now gotten to the point that it's showing such buttery, sweet goodness, kindness from the very first conversation that makes you feel good. And it gives you these quality feelings that you think, okay, I have not had these in a while. I really like these words. And it's similar in a way to an abusive relationship psychologically, how it makes you feel good, really good in the beginning. And then you start to isolate yourself because, okay, now all of these people that I have put my problems about into this machine, they're wrong and I'm right, because it's confirming everything you're putting in there. Then you end up isolating yourself because you feel like, again, this is all very psychological, you feel like no one else is understanding you, which is not true. That's a self-limiting belief. And you feel like the only validation now that you're going to get from someone who actually understands where you're coming from, oftentimes, is from ChatGPT. So it becomes very dangerous for people in the sense that you will end up having to face the psychological implications of the false connections. And I would say that's comparable to junk food and sugar for your brain. And it's overprocessed, it's unreal, it's not human connection. We actually have to be connected and grounded with one another to be healthy, to be happy, and to feel whole. And because it's overprocessed and unreal for the brain, the detriment of the mental and emotional waste is just going to create more anxiety and more fear than you had coming to ChatGPT in the first place. So just remember that it is an aspect of unreality, and what you go back to in the day is not going to be the same as that. The only way to improve that situation is to actually put emotional work, communicative work in those days. And part of that as well is discomfort. It's not comfortable to have these conversations. It's not comfortable to say something that you know is going to lead to an argument with someone. It's not comfortable. But getting through these things are what lets you know what relationships are and aren't actually meant for you, because they will survive and they will last them. And they will be so much better because of that. Comfort is a prison, and it's addicting. So people more quickly, on average, choose comfort over challenge. But challenge is the only thing that makes us feel good in the end. It's just one of those conundrums of life. And that is interesting in the sense that now we live in a time where things are delivered to you like that. You want something online, you can have it tomorrow. If you want a drink, a food, whatever, you can have it delivered to you. All of these things are comforts. The tech now is the next thing of, okay, now you don't have to talk to humans. You don't have to do X, Y, and Z. Again, this is a comfort. But the more comforts that we lean into, the more we are robbed of our freedoms, and the more we are robbed of our strength. So the things that are going to lead to a better life are the things that challenge us. Because again, as we observe in natural order, natural law, natural systems, even the tree that lives in the valley where it's soft, where it's lush, that tree is going to be much more delicate than a tree that lives toward the top of the mountain that has to brave the wind. One of these trees is going to be stronger than the other. And we have the same nature. You see it very clearly in the people who work out versus the people who don't. So one of them is thriving. One of them, their lymphatics are draining. Their body is not toxic. They're always getting rid of all the bad things in their body through sweat. The muscles are built. The muscles maintain metabolism. They eat well. They feel good. And on the other hand, you have people who are not in good shape, who don't feel good, who eat things that toxify their body. And this is basically what these false relationships with technology are doing to you as well, but now psychologically and mentally. And I think it's so important for us to understand that just because we cannot see it happening, like we can spot maybe obesity in ourselves, or if our skin's not looking the best because we're eating too much sugar, things like that, we can see those things. But just because you can't see the psychological effects of things that are changing now and moving so rapidly with technology doesn't mean that they're not there and they don't affect you. The evidence is in depression. It is in anxiety. It is in a lack of social awareness and a lack of wanting to be around and with your community, because you become so shatterable in the sense that when you build your reality in something that is fake and false, you're not able to function when you are met with what the truth is, which is reality. And this disconnection points to a bigger disconnection from ourselves. And I believe we are so deeply tied and inseparable from nature. This goes back to holistic living systems. This goes back to indigenous wisdom. Our self. So any problem that you're having where you feel like there's a challenge you cannot overcome, everything is tested in you, and you're only left with yourself. And the question becomes, who are you when you are left to yourself? If everything is taken away, who are you? Barren in the desert. Who is that? What does that mean? This is something that I feel like we are so distracted from figuring out in so many ways because we have so much technology in our hand and around us, and now to speak to us and emulate human behavior and make us think that we've made a new friend in it and not understand the extent of what getting rid of the real friends is to us, the danger of that and the disconnection from ourselves, because everyone else that we are also connected to is part of this human experience. And we're all here doing this together, no matter what flavor it shows up in, no matter what culture, what color, what creed, what class. We are all human. A human is a human, and everyone is experiencing the same thing. It just looks different. The pain points are different. So it's important to understand yourself to a T to be able to understand everyone else, and tech can get in the way of that. So it's also so important to remember that there are ways to mitigate these things. There are ways to say, okay, I see what's happening. I know we're heading in a very technologically advanced direction. That, I think, at this point is inevitable. It's in everything now. So it's about us being very conscious of our consumption. It's about us monitoring our screen time. I personally have a timer for social media on my phone. Sometimes I ignore the timer. I'm a human being, all right? My psychology is addictive as well. But even just having these barriers in place keep you more mindful of how much time you're spending on these apps. There are things that allow you to track how much time you spend on social media, how much time you spend on the internet weekly, and allow you to step outside of that me mindset and thinking that everything is driven by your own thoughts and those echoes of those thoughts, because we are so stuck in a room sometimes just on our phone alone. And in-person dialogues and events are amazing to break this down. I realize that so many of us feel like there's something missing, and it's very deep. And it is this deep connection of community, of sharing experiences with one another that goes beyond, oh yeah, we're going to go get drinks on the weekend. So I saw something fleetingly yesterday that said that isolation is worse than alcoholism, that it will kill you faster. There's something in our psychology where we are such herd animals, such social creatures, that we truly need each other. So being stuck to a device that emulates human behavior, that emulates relationships, and not stepping outside of that can really, really destroy your confidence and everything else you have going on, because psychologically it is, again, fast food for the brain and for the heart. And it's important, I think, to do things that strengthen your will to live. And that is the hard things. That is the challenging things. That is, personally, I have a time limit for my phone. So it automatically goes on Do Not Disturb at 9 p.m. And I have a rule, I'm not on my phone before 9 a.m. or after 9 p.m. You have to be very disciplined in certain ways to be able to keep your mental health in check. Because if not, because our psychology can become so addicting, it becomes a playground. And too much pleasure puts you in a place where you only experience pain. Reason being, again, is because challenge creates growth in us. That's just a pattern of life. The more you do things that challenge you, the more life you get. If you choose more comfort over the challenge, oftentimes your life is shorter because you're less healthy, because you indulge more in things that are not cohesive to your own growth and your own good. And I think now that tech is part of that. There's an influencer I really like, and he does investing in stocks and things like that. And he was talking about the effects of his phone because he's on it so much. I think he said he was on the phone for 6 hours straight or something crazy. And his eye would not stop twitching for like 2 hours. So there are also a lot of physiological effects that we don't realize are happening. And just because we can't, again, see the effects like this, doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It's like saying that oxygen doesn't exist or air doesn't exist, or no, there's no carbon at all. Just because you cannot see something does not mean it's not happening, but you absolutely will feel the effects. So it's just really important for us to really go out, be with our people, and put the tech down sometimes. Because if not, it becomes such a mental war, lack of confidence, echo chamber for thoughts that may not be conducive or constructive to our own growth. And I think it really inhibits what we're able to do as human beings sometimes. And it's important for us to remember that they're tools to be used. And this is one of those types of tools that if you don't use it with intention and discipline, you will be used by it. So do not ever become a slave to it. And if you feel like you are, and there's constant anxiety, there's constant depression, there's questioning and breaking of relationships that maybe are not the best decision to be breaking, remember to ground down. Everybody says touch grass, and it's so cliche in a sense, but the actual biological functions that happen when you are grounded and you are in nature, and the way it affects your cellular structure, and even just the way the birds sing and how that makes your body feel like you're safe, because bird song doesn't happen when there's a disturbance and there are predators around, they're quiet. There's so many things that happen at this level of intelligence that we don't even realize. So remember that you always have the power to feel better. It just always seems like the hard way that leads to actual joy. The easy way does the opposite. So thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to the next episode and seeing you all again. Peace.